Hello and welcome to 25 Concepts in Anthropology. In this series I try to present to you what I think are the 25 most important concepts in anthropology and to give myself 10 minutes or less to explain each one. Today I want to talk about magic. We use the word magic as anthropologists when we come across beliefs or practices in other cultures or our own which seem to rely on humans' ability to control the supernatural. In other words, where humans believe and practice control of the supernatural, we will call that magic. Differentiating magic from religion can be difficult. There are several grounds which we might want to do this on. In the first case, magic tends to be an individual's direct control over the supernatural, whereas religion seems to be via a deity like God. Another difference is that magic tends to be more short-term, so when we come across beliefs and practices, supernatural beliefs and practices which are associated with short-term results, we'll use the word magic, and when it tends to be more long-term, we might use the word religion. And lastly, if the beliefs and practices which are supernatural are directed towards the individual, we tend to use the word magic, whereas if we see beliefs and practices which are tended towards a whole community, we tend to use the word religion. The two are a continuum, so it's really a matter of judgment call which one you're going to use, whether you're going to call it magic or whether you're going to call it religion. Now, the first and perhaps one of the greatest insights into magic from an anthropological perspective comes from Frazer. He said that there are two kinds of magic. The first kind he called sympathetic magic. And sympathetic magic is based on similarity. The idea is that anything that is similar in appearance is in fact linked. So we could think of this as more specifically in two ways. One is homeopathic magic, and the other one is contagious magic. Now, with homeopathic magic, the important thing is that two things which look alike are connected. Now, an example of that is a voodoo doll. If you make a voodoo doll of me that looks like me, if you put a pin into the tooth of your voodoo doll, that will make my tooth hurt too. So that we call homeopathic magic. The other kind of magic is contagious magic. And you can think of that in relation to, for example, fingernail clippings, hair cuttings. In many cultures, people will be very careful to burn or do away with their hair clippings and fingernail clippings because they're worried that people will use that for magic. And the reason why people might use that for magic is that it could the idea is that things that were once in contact remain in contact. So my fingernail was once in contact with me, and even after it's cut from me, it still maintains that contact. So there are two kinds, if you like, of sympathetic magic. One is homeopathic, things that look alike. The other is contagious, two things that are in contact. Another definitional addition, if you like, would be between black magic and white magic. Now, like all the terms we're going to use, these are debated whether they're actually useful. But anyway, black magic will use to refer not to magic so much which harms somebody, but really magic which is considered by that society to be illegitimate. It might, for example, be considered not to be black magic if you harm a thief through magic. So it's not so much whether it's harming or not, but it's whether it's legitimate or illegitimate. So if it's a society in which only the chiefs should use magic and a commoner uses magic, then that would be black magic because it's illegitimate. White magic we refer simply to legitimate magic. Okay, probably the greatest work on magic comes from well, let's say the grandfather of anthropology, Evans-Pritchard. Evans-Pritchard talked about the case of a granary collapsing on a man. How do you make sense of this? A granary is a place where the Azandi people store their grains, and Azandi men and women sit underneath that granary during the heat of the day to escape the sun. It happens, as the Azandi know, that termites eat away at the supports on the supports or the stands for the granary, and sometimes it collapses on people. Now, why does it collapse, for example, on my cousin and not some other person? You might, or if, for example, you're watching me here and suddenly a brick falls off the building or lightning comes and hits me, you wonder, why did it hit Nick at this very time and not some other time? And if you know me or in fact like me, you're wondering, why did it have to happen to somebody I like? So there are different ways of explaining it, and what Evans-Pritchard says, basically witchcraft is one way of explaining misfortune. Now, if lightning came and hit me, you might want to say, oh, it's coincidence. It's a coincidence just while he was recording this film, lightning hit him. However, what is a coincidence? The existence of coincidences has never been proven. They're crucial to our understanding of the world, but how could we say they are real or any more real than the way that a Zandi person explains it, which is as a result of witchcraft? He thinks if a granary collapses on his cousin or if I get hit by lightning, witchcraft must have been behind it. Other people might say spirits, God, ancestors. There are various ways to explain misfortune, but for the Zandi, it is primarily witchcraft. So that was Evans-Pritchard's great insight into witchcraft and magic. Another great insight was provided by another, if you like, founding father of anthropology, and that was Bronislaw Malinovski. Now, Malinovski wrote about magic amongst the Trobriand Islanders. The Trobriand Islanders are famous for their trade between the various islands in their archipelago. Now, what is interesting is that they have magic for the ships that go between the islands, for the boats that go between the islands, and that, for example, is charms and spells to ensure that the boats don't sink and the people on them are safe. But they don't have this magic for the little canoes that go on the lagoon. Now, Malinowski asked us, why is this so? I want you to think for a second. Why would it be that boats that go between islands will have magic associated with them, magic rituals, but boats that just stay on the calm lagoon around the island don't have magic? I wonder if you came up with the same answer as Malinowski. Malinowski suggested that you can control most of the things in the lagoon. It's a very safe area, people don't often die. But when you go past the lagoon, between the islands, there are all kinds of things you can't control, such as the swells, storms, currents, sharks, winds, etc., all of which can result in fatalities. So the answer Malinowski gives us is that magic is used when there are things that are beyond our control. This idea was taken up by another anthropologist by the name of Gmelch. Now, Gmelch writes, yes, Malinowski was right about this, and it's the same in baseball. There's no baseball magic associated with, for example, throwing from the outfield or taking catches in the outfield. There's no magic associated with running between bases. But what there is a lot of magic associated with is pitching and batting. And these are things that, if you know baseball, you know are largely beyond the control of the batters and the pitchers. For example, the difference between a batting average of 200 and 300 in the major leagues of baseball is just the tiniest margin of millimeters, if you like, between where the ball is hit, whether it goes up in the air or whether it goes straight up in the air or whether it goes out past the outfield for a home run. So Gmelch says, well, all these baseballers have what we would call superstitions, but in fact classic examples of magic under the anthropological definition. For example, they'll have their lucky socks, they have their lucky bat, etc., etc. And this gives them a sense of confidence. And confidence is gold, he says. With this confidence, they are more likely to succeed. So both Malinovski and Gmelch have an explanation which you could call functional. It's functional in as much as it shows how functionalism focuses on how certain beliefs and practices help the individual or the group to survive. So if you have confidence, if magic provides you with confidence, there's more chance you'll succeed. Okay, now we have to return to this idea of superstition. Basically what we call in the West, as I suggested, superstition is what anthropologists call magic. In other words, we think there are a lot of things that we might be responsible. If I wish very, very bad things for you, and it just so happens that I hate you and I wish bad things for you, and you drown, I might actually hold myself a little bit responsible. I might think, maybe I caused that, and that's because I have this kind of what people outside anthropology would call superstition, but what anthropologists would call magic. And it's in all kinds of things in our life. We try and avoid number 13. We hang on our rear view mirror in the car crosses, stars of David's, bits of Islamic verse, etc., to try and control the things that are out of control for us. And this basically is a definition of magic. Finally, I want to touch on one idea which relates to the supernatural. So far I've been talking about supernatural, and we refer to, again, where humans believe they can control the supernatural through their own means. When we see this in other cultures or our own, we call this magic. The important thing to say here is that in a lot of societies, there's no distinction between natural and supernatural. Everything is encompassed as natural/supernatural. It's not a meaningful division. So, for example, if I strike two rocks together and a spark comes out, two bits of flint or metal and flint together, and a spark comes, in some societies that's magic/supernatural. Now we think, for example, Western science, we have these ideas of causality. But in fact, even within our own philosophical tradition, people like David Hume have pointed out we've never ever seen a cause. So we have even reason to doubt our own scientific, rational explanations. Leaving that aside though, in many societies that we study, it doesn't make sense to talk about the supernatural. Only from an outsider's or an etic, E-T-I-C, or outsider's perspective, could we say that these things are supernatural. Finally, a lot of recent research has shown that with modernity, magic beliefs are not dying out. In fact, magic beliefs are becoming more common with things like the rise of capitalism and the growth of the modern nation state. With the growth of the modern national state and with capitalism, magic beliefs are growing. And a classic example is from my own country, Australia, where there's a movement called Wicca, in which there are modern, if you like, people who believe they are witches, who believe they can control things. Now, it should also be said that this is not just, some people would dismiss this as stupidity, but in fact, people who are Wiccans tend to be very well educated and tend to be, I suppose, more intelligent than the average punter. So, in conclusion, magic is a part of our lives, and it's still a part of our lives in the modern world, and anthropology has a lot to say about it. Thank you very much.